Oh, yeah, it's a beautiful story. Say to myself, when you hold the mic. Oh, that's right. That's right. But it's Pumbakert. He didn't want to take the money and he wanted to pay. It's the opposite of this, myself. That was one of the reasons why the minister knew he was a big child. Right. What were the other two mices? Oh, and he had already paid for it. Say that. He said, "Give me this money, what you want." Right. And the third mice? Okay, when it comes up. Okay, gewaltig. So we brought up a question. You put a quarter in to save your friend from getting a parking ticket. Can you demand back? And I didn't. Can you be mechayiv him to pay you back? So let's see what comes out in the Gemara tonight. Misha halach lamadina sayah. Someone went away. He moved away. He went on a long trip and he left his wife at home. And his wife didn't have what to eat. So v'amad echad, some benevolent individual decided that he's going to take care of this woman who was abandoned by her husband. Now the question is, will he be able to collect back what he laid out from the husband when the husband gets back? Excuse me. So before I go on, our parak started with Hanan, who made 2 gzeros, and with Admon, who made 7 gzeros. So this is the second gzera of Hanan, right? What was the first gzera that we talked about? That she doesn't have to swear. If she has to liquidate her husband's assets from his own, she does not have to swear. That's what Hanan said. And if you remember, at the end of the Mishnah, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said, and I agree with Hanan. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was a fan of Hanan because he's going to agree with Hanan over here as well. So he said, this fellow, he was a kind guy, power to him, very ehrlich guy. He saved this woman, but he doesn't get his money back. Why doesn't he get his money back? I was going to say, I didn't tell you lay out the money for me and I'll pay you back. I didn't ask you. But if when he laid out the money, he told the woman, I'm not giving this to you as a gift. This is a loan, and I expect to be paid back in full. Then hu toiva, he could collect from her. He toivas habal, and she'll go and collect from her husband. Vishalom, and he'll have to pay. And Rashi says, we learned this Gemara. We learned the Gemara that tells us that's halacha. We just learned it in the past 2 days. Kidu Amar Leil, the Gemara said, Amama'enes, he doesn't give mizonos. And the Gemara asked, Hechidami, what's the case where Amama'enes doesn't get mizonos? So the case was where this little girl who was married to this man, Midrabanon, her husband went away, and she went and borrowed money from somebody for mizonos, and she said, don't worry, when my husband come back, he'll pay you. But she wasn't so smart. When her husband came home, she should have kuchikut him and be nice to him and welcomed him back, asked him for the money, and then dump him. But instead, she dumped him right away. So now that she made mion, he no longer has to pay the bill. So you see from here, time of demiyana. The only reason why he doesn't have to pay the bill is because she was mimayin and the marriage is broken. Haloi miyana had you not been mine mishalom. So you see, if a woman takes mizonis from a stranger and says, "Don't worry, I'll pay you back," they could ultimately get the money out of the husband. So here, obviously, what Rashi was speaking about a case where there was no such discussion. In his mind, he might have thought that he would be able to retrieve his money from the Baal, but he didn't speak anything out. So ebay das moisa. However, nechalaku alav b'nei kahanim gedolim. Somehow Hanan didn't get along with the kahanim gedolim because the children of the kahanim gedolim argued on him. They said, no, he does get his money back. He could swear how much money he laid out. And he may collect that from the husband. Amar Abdois ben Hurkiah is Kedavreim. And Abdois ben Hurkiah is just like in the last Mishnah, he agreed with the Kahanim Gedolim. Here he agrees with them as well. But Amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, Yofa Amar Hanan. Hanan had good gesagt. It's like you put money on the head of a deer, it's going to run away under horn. You'll never see it again. It's similar to responding to those emails that tell you that you have a great uncle who died in Uganda and he left you $50 million, and all you have to do is send in $1,000 application fee, and then you'll get your money. That's called hinich mois al keren hatzvi. How do I know? Don't ask. Okay. So we learned as follows. Before we go weiter, this is a massive sugya. This question of loans. Now, our Mishnah is speaking about a case where someone laid out money for the wife. But there are similar cases. What if Reuben owes Shimon $1,000 and Reuben's struggling, he doesn't have money? So I go to Shimon and I give Shimon $1,000. I pay up Reuben's choice. Can I go now, turn around and ask Reuben to pay me up? I laid out the money for you, so you're taken care of. Now I want you to pay me back. So that might be similar to this. In fact, it's a machlokes rishonim. If Hanan only said as halacha legabe someone giving mizonos to his wife, that's the shita of Rabbeinu Tam. But we're going to soon see Rashi says beferish. It's exactly the same thing if you pay off someone's loan, and that would take us to the shaila of when you put a quarter in the meter. So this is a huge shaila that's brought down in Shulchan Aruch, and it's discussed. Why is it relevant? Because Tosfos has a very important kasha. Hanan said that you don't get paid back when you come to someone's aid, when you come to someone's rescue. Frek Tosfos, lekalak shuya, don't ask me mehad kaim alon. Hayorid l'sech sada shel chaveiroi v'nata shaloi b'rishus. You have a friend who has a field, and it's not being cultivated. You went and planted trees and created tremendous value for this person, but no one asked you to. The law is shaman like aris. If a sharecropper lets you get 25%, 30% of the enhanced value, well, that's what you get. Why don't you say the same thing? Or what if your friend's house is half knocked down and you built it and you improved it? Again, your friend has to give you what you made his house better. So why is it that over here you don't get back and there you do? Zoktois is a very important distinction. The Hazam Shvach Be'enu. There I could show you this tree is here, it wasn't there before me. You have an extra item, so I'm entitled to part of it. Therefore, Vidin Hushayita. Aval Hacha Lo Yishbich Lo Yishum Shvach Nechosim. I didn't enhance, I didn't make you any more richer, give you anything more you didn't have. I just saved you from the pressure of the collection agency of your bachayv. But you didn't give him anything. The Hava, and now Tosfos introduces a new important principle. Imagine you're a friend that's a chicken coop, and there's a fox coming to eat up the chickens, and you chase away the fox, and it costs you money to do that. Can you collect your expenses? You cannot. Now, even though you did benefit your friend, you're not mechayiv anything. So you see, the only time you automatically can collect nadin is if you, in fact, create a value-added benefit. Then you can collect. But saving what he has, that you cannot collect for. But that's going to change very quickly, because Tosfos asks from a shomer chinam who has to watch something on behalf of his friend. If he has to lay out money, let's say there's a pack of wolves coming, and he has to hire people and get sticks and weapons. So he has to lay out money to save whatever he's watching for his friend. In fact, he does get paid. So on the second line of the top of Kufches, he can actually go reclaim. So what's the difference? So this is what Tosfos is struggling with. And then it says if you saved your friend from damage and it costed you money, which means he will get the difference in what he would have made otherwise and what he did now. So Tosfos is struggling to understand why sometimes does he get paid and sometimes not, because he's shown even when you're saving somebody from loss, sometimes the Gemara says you do get paid, and sometimes the Gemara says you don't get paid. So Zokt Tosfos, Rabbeinu Tam is going to teach us later on at the bottom Tosfos that this Mishnah that we had here, that the person who laid out the money doesn't get paid back, is dafka b'mefarnis esishteka amar chadam. It's only by mefarnis esishteka. You know why? Because I can say you didn't do me a favor by laying out the money. Because had you not laid out the money, it wouldn't have costed me a penny anyway. You know why? Because you know what? She could have tightened her belt and not spent so much money. And Toysus at the bottom asked, and even though she has a right to liquidate his assets. So what do you mean she could tighten the belt? She's not going to tighten her belt. She has a right to go liquidate her assets. So I'm just going to skip down to the bottom Toysus, exactly 50% down. The first word is Mikol Makayim. Hoisim is sometimes. Even though she has a right to liquidate, she would not liquidate. You know why? The Likri law, Rav Sanusa. Who wants to have a reputation? She wanted to eat every day in Java and Jewel, so she sold off her husband's properties. Nobody wants to have such a bad reputation, so she wouldn't do it. So therefore, the husband will say, "You didn't do me a favor by laying out money. Well, I needed you to pay her unlimited costs in Java and Jewels. Let her go to the grocery store, buy some lettuce, and chop it up, and make herself a salad. She could afford to lose a few pounds anyway. So therefore, Zokt the Rebbe Tam is machalish a new thing that the only time I don't have to pay you back is if I claim you didn't benefit me." So Toysus at the bottom brings a Yerushalmi that says that even when it comes to a loan, I can say you didn't benefit me. You know why? Because I would have delayed out of it. I would have begged you for Achmanis. I would have bought him an Ali in Shul, and then they would have been Moichel the loan. I would have weaseled my way out of it. So therefore, I don't have to pay you back. However, the Omer Rebbe Zok Toysus, he minadin hayavadai potter. Maybe in fact minadin, you never have a right to claim back what you laid out to help somebody else. Kidamash mahacha, like Hanan said over here. Now, of course, this is not following the Rebbeinu Tam. This is going according to the Shita and the Rishonim, like Rashi, that the same way you don't have to pay back this fellow, the husband doesn't have to pay back this fellow who was kind enough to give his wife money. You also wouldn't have to pay back somebody who paid off your loan. You don't have to do that. When you're risking your life to save somebody's property, and you're expending money to save somebody's property, it's not mikra din. It's a takanas chachamim hasam sheyishalmuloi, that the beneficiary should pay the person who expends something to save him. Chazal want people to return avedis. If someone loses something, it's upsetting. So we want to induce people to help. So because of that, we'll say if it cost you money, at least you can reclaim your expense. If you had to save your friend's animals from getting attacked by lions or a pack of wolves, and you had to hire an army of shepherds and sticks to protect it, once again, the chayzer v'noitel scharmi balabais. Why? Chazal want people to help be good Samaritans and save other people. However, I'm just jumping down another line. We don't have to make a takana. We don't want to induce people to pay up other people's loans. We have no interest in that. We don't induce people to give other people's wives money. So therefore, this is not mikra din. It's only a takana. So once you work with takana, so then you look and see when it benefits the guy and when not. So this is where the poskim have a lot of discussion about when you do back and when you don't pay back. So the mechaber brings down that if someone lends money and then somebody else pays off the loan, of course he can collect. And the Ramah brings down, maybe that's only if it's a Jew and the Jew is not pressuring the loiva to pay back, but maybe if the Jew is pressuring the loiva to pay back, or maybe if the malva is a goy, where you can't get out of it, maybe there the Ramah says that you could demand your money back. And the Shach brings down someone who argues vehemently, I think the Shach argues vehemently on the Ramah and says, how could you say such a thing? Avada, even by a goy, you don't have to pay back. As a matter of fact, you don't have to pay back goyim because you're allowed to be mafsed a goy by being mevatel loans. You might not be able to steal from a goy, you might not be able to do gezelakum, but you definitely don't have to pay back a loan. And then people scream at the Shach for that. The choice is that's not true. That's only if your choiv died and it's the kids and they don't really know if you borrowed it, then you could say you paid back already. But the actual baldin, the actual goy who lent you the money, who knows you have the money, you do have to pay back. So then maybe you could mum. So there's a lot of discussion about that. But if you can get out of the loan or not, Mr. Sakachevsky once told somebody that Gezel Akim is mitted, but a vet gechapt is zayed bitter. That's one of his lines. Gewaltig, gewaltig. So, I will say over from, it was just his yard site this week. Moshe Weisbaum, it was just his yard site this week. So he says over a masa that he had with Mr. Shechatzovsky, who's also his yard site was just now. So he said over that when he bought his first house, he asked Mr. Shechatzovsky for a loan. He used to lend that money. So when he was giving him the loan, Mr. Shechatzovsky pulled out a book, a record book, and he wrote down the loan. So Moshe Weisbaum tells him, "Oy, Mr. Shechatzovsky, midday bich es darangein en geneiden." So Mr. Shechatzovsky says, "Nicht midday bich, kim ich al de glas and andere bich." Big 10 times as fat is a football. Midday bich al darangein en geneiden. Day bich is the bich von nicht zules. The bich was ich die herangeschrieben haben, ich herangeschrieben ist der bich von zules. Die soll sein bleiben in day bich, nicht in jene bich. Ich will nicht gar nicht geneiden auf da Gespiel. Head checks. So this is the Maisa. Okay. So there's a lot of very interesting shilas around that, whether or not I could say I could got out of it, I couldn't have got out of it, and how they're pushing. And the Shulchan Aruch brings very interesting cases. One of the cases the Shulchan Aruch brings is, it's brought down in the Noisa Kalim, is this never happens nowadays. The Malchus came up on a guy and said, "We caught you with stolen goods. You have goods that you're selling. They're stolen goods." And they wanted to put a big count on them. And the community was concerned, so the community paid this fine. And the question was, could the community go back and collect from this person? Even though the person says, "I would have fought it in court. I didn't need you to pay the knas because I'm innocent." So there's a whole big shiloh. If he's innocent, if he's not innocent, would he have to pay? Would he not have to pay? It's a big shiloh that they all are medayik from here. That's right, but they bring. That's right. Right, exactly. So that's a shiloh. He said I wasn't mechuyev anyway. And then there was another case where there was a malamed, and this the Ramad says before. So remember, he's on a case where a malamed was staying in somebody's house for years and years, and he borrowed a lot of money from goyim, and then he left town. And now they know where he lived, so they came pounding on the door, and they're going to beat up this yid. We want the money. It's not his fault. Now it happened to be the Malamed left over a little bit of cash in the house when he left. So this yid paid up, and now he wants to retain that cash. The Ramah says he cannot retain that cash. He has no right to retain the cash. He paid that money to save his life. He wasn't paying up the Malamed's choiv. So the Ramah says absolutely not. You can't keep it. And there's a whole tumult about that too. So this is a big sugya about when you lay out money for somebody else, what your rights are in recollection. Okay, let's see the Heilig of the Gemara Vayter. So that takes us, that's the Mishnah. Tnan Hasam, we learned in a Brisa, Hamudur Ano Mechavera. So let's make this real. Reuven told Shimon, you may not have one bit of Ano for me. So the question is, there are certain things that you're not allowed to do for him because he's having enough from you. But there are certain things that aren't considered him having Ano from you, and you're allowed to do things for him, such as Shoikoloi as Shikloi. We know that every Purim time, before Chodesh Nisan, every Jew of Klal Yisrael contributes to the Machzah Shekel, to the Lishka, and it's from those Shkolim, amongst the other things we learned about just a couple of days ago, they take Trumas Lishka, they take Shkolim from those Shkolim, with which they buy all the Karbanos Tzibur, and the idea is that every single Yid in Klal Yisrael should have a chelik in the Karbanos Tzibur. We discussed what you do with the extra money, if you buy Ketzah Mizbeach, if you can make Klisharis out of it, right? We had a lot of discussion of what they do. We discussed that you could pay the people who teach the people Shchita, and who teach the people Malika, and who teach the people how to make Lechem Aponim, because that's all Tzorchei Karbanos. Anyway, so the halacha is you're allowed to lay out the money. The question, how can you lay out the money? You're helping him, right? You're helping him. And forget you're buying for him a chelik in the Karbanos. So that's going to be something that we're going to need an explanation of. You're allowed to pay off his loan. So if he would be mechuyev to pay me back, then I wouldn't be allowed to pay off his loan. Because if I'm moichel it, I'm being mahanim. But it says I'm allowed to pay off his loan. So from this raya, you have a klor raya that if you pay off someone's loan, you have no tviyah on him whatsoever. If you find his aveda, you're allowed to return it to him. However, there are certain places where the custom was to pay a person who found your avodah. He would pay you for your costs, right? So here you can't. So here he can't pay. Why can't Shimon pay back Reuben? We just said now that Reuben said I won't give Shimon any anah, but why can't Shimon give Reuben anah? So Rashi says this is speaking in the case where it became reciprocal, where Reuben said, not only will I not give you anah, but I'm also not going to have anah from you. So b'makom shelo tzar, people anah lahektish, Shimon can't accept the aveda because he has to pay, but he can't pay back to Reuben because Reuben can't have anah. So what do? They give it to hektish. What does Rashi say? The fourth line from the top, Tipol hanois haschai lahektish, sharei shneim mudrin v'anah zemizeh. They're both also to have enough from each other. So the only way to deal with this is people hanois lahektish. And I once shared a beautiful story with you about the Abteruv. The Abteruv is not buried in Abt. The Abteruv is buried in Meshbish. Why? Because at the pinnacle of his career, he gets up one day and he says, Rabbi Zai, I am resigning. I'm gone. I'm leaving. So his Kehillah was aghast. Why would you resign? We overpay you. We treat you with the greatest respect. It's a beautiful Kehillah, and you're just quitting? So he says, let me tell you a story that happened 100 years ago. There was once a couple that died, and they left over two young twin boys that were each about 2-3 years old. Now, they have to find now a foster home or adoptive parents for these boys. Now, in those days, people barely had enough food to feed their families. Surely they weren't in the position to take in another child. And surely they weren't in the position to take in 2 children. So it was inevitable they had to split these boys up at a young age. And one was adopted by a family that lived in the city of Apt, and the other one was adopted by a family that lived in some other city. And both of these men grew up and got married, but neither of them were zoicha to children. The man that lived in Apt became very, very wealthy, but the man that lived in the other village was poverty-stricken. Vayhi the man that was wealthy in Apt turned sick. He was an older man. He became sick. And when someone's sick, they start having flashbacks of their life. And he vaguely remembered that he had a brother, a twin brother. So he tells his wife, Houston, we got a problem. Because if I die, you're going to be a naguna unless we can find my brother to give you chalitza. Everyone asks, how come she didn't give her a get? First of all, he was rich. She didn't want to get divorced from him. But the real reason is we learned in Masechah Yevamis that there's a huge to'elos for the neshama when chalitza is done. And we actually had a shiloh where a woman asked for a get, and the Bezin Paskin, that he has a right to say, I'm not giving you a get, and you're mechuyev to go with the chalitza. There was a case where the brother was not firm, and they were afraid that she wouldn't be able to get a chalitza easily. But Bezin said, no, he doesn't have to give you a get because it's a big aliyah for his neshama to have the chalitza. So he said, what I'll do is, how far can my brother be? We didn't have such great transportation in those days. He's probably nearby. I don't know about him. So I'm going to send letters to Kehillas all around this region, to the Rav of each Kehillah, to describe who I'm looking for. We have a pretty good description of him, and maybe we'll find our man. And he did that, and then he died. A couple of months after he died, the Almona gets a letter from a Rav in the nearby town that says, we have your man. So she sent him back, beautiful, please send him to the Chalitza. I'm a very, very wealthy widow, and tell him if he comes and does Chalitza and frees me, I will give him half of my husband's fortune. So the Rav was very excited, and the Rav knew that this guy can't afford a train ticket. So he went to a gvir in the city and he says, this fellow needs to borrow a lot of money to go to make this journey, but don't worry, he's going to come back rich as can be. He'll have no problem getting paid back. So he got the loan and he called the Yidden. He says, Rabbi, the Bianco, this came up. This is mitzvah. We think you should go. I laid it for you money to borrow for a train ticket. Everything's good. He says, sure, but I can't just go on a several-week journey without first speaking to my wife. So he goes to his wife and he tells his wife, what do you think about me marrying another woman? And she clobbered him over the head. No, that's not what happened. He said, I want to go do chalitza to my wife, to my brother's wife, my brother's almana. And not only that, we're going to be rich. We're going to be rich. So she looks at him and she says, let me ask you, my dear husband, how often are you zoiche to be bekayim the mitzvah of Krishma? He says, twice a day. And how often are you zoiche to be bekayim the mitzvah of Shabbos? Once a week. And how often are you zoiche to be bekayim the mitzvah of shofar? Once a year. And how often are you zoiche to be bekayim the mitzvah of chalitza? Once in a lifetime. And you're going to sell it for a billig at $4? You have to make a shvur right now that you're not going to take a penny to do this chalitza. And he made this shvur, and suddenly that loan dried up. And he had to walk for weeks to get to the city. He turned up as a vagabond, citizen in Sahak. But of course, in Apt, he was a big celebrity. He was coming to do chalitza. They did the chalitza, and as soon as the chalitza was done, the door to the Besmanish opens. There's a wagon there, overloaded with gold, and she says, "My dear brother-in-law, this is for you." He says, I'm not taking it." She says, "Why not?" "Because I made a shvo, wouldn't take a penny." She says, "But I promised I'd give it to you." And he says, "You know what? We talking must be related. We only met a couple of minutes ago, and we're already fighting." So we had a problem. Just like in this case, she had to pay, but he couldn't take the money. So she said, "You know what? We're going to donate the money to the Abta Kehila, Tibla no Lektish," and they donated the money to the Kehila. Now this Yid, without a penny to his name, is walking home. As he's walking home, the Himmelin started chuckling, vackling, and the Gzeira that he didn't have children broke. And when he came home, his wife became expecting, and they gave birth to that baby. So the Abdurov says, "You know who that baby was? That baby is me. I only came here because I couldn't forget that you had my father's money. So I came to claim my money. And according to my cheshbon, you're fully paid. And because of that, I am going to be on my way." So that's the story of the Abdurov. I heard this Maisa. I heard this Maisa from a Meshkiach in Bnei Brak whose name is Shlomo Levenstein. He's a pretty well-known Maggid. But Chaim Fear said that he heard the same story from the Baba Baruch, not in such great detail, but he heard the same story. The Abdurov. So he came from such a nace he came from. He sagt to more weiter. No, I don't know. Okay, Zok the Gemara. I understand why you could pay for a shekel and it's not called that you're manim. Mitzvah kavod. You're doing the mitzvah by giving it. He doesn't get the mitzvah. What about the fact that you're now buying him a share in the karbonis? He has a share in the karbonis even if he didn't give a shekel. How do I know that? It's not me learned. Termin, right? There was all the money in the lishka, and they made a trumas lishka in order to take a representation of the money to buy karbonis with. But when they're taking the truma, who are they representing in this truma? Allah Ovid, if someone said money got lost. Allah Gavi, what was collected, it wasn't delivered yet. By the Osad Ligvois, which Rashi says, Osad Ligvois, even if the person will never give it. Even if someone didn't contribute to the Machzah Shekel, he still has a chelik in the Karbonos. Tosfos argues. All it is that he misses the mitzvah. So this fellow who gave the shekel on behalf of his friend, he wasn't Mahana's friend at all, because his friend didn't get the mitzvah of giving it, he got the mitzvah. And as far as the share in the carbon, his friend that anyway. He's giving his friend what belongs to his friend anyway, and he just got a mitzvah out of it. So again, he's not benefiting his friend. I'm sorry? I'm not giving him something that he doesn't have. I'm giving back his own thing.
He lost it.
And but I'm still giving him back his own thing, and I would become a mitzvah, so he doesn't get anything out of it.
Yeah, but the both the mother and I'm getting a no, but I'm getting back my thing.
But I guess that's not considered enough of a hana. It is a no, right? You're benefiting, but I guess there's no shavius of moment on that hana, so that's why it won't be a problem. Because right, the Gemara says if in fact it's something that people pay for, he has to pay.
Find something that I lost. I have more than when I buy something.
But I guess it's a hana that's not a moment. I guess. I hear.
It's your item. It's your thing.
I hear, but the Gemara. The Gemara says that the Brisa says that it's not a hana. That would be awesome. Yeah. But it still doesn't qualify to be violating an Isra hana. So I don't know the five laws. The kasha here very stark. I don't know the five laws. The vos I know. the Brisa says that it's not a problem. Why? I don't understand. Lamaisa, you're being mahanim developed. Okay, but is 100% right. When I learned it bothered me. Lamaisa, I'm being mahanim. But unless it's something that there's a value to that you pay for, like the Brisa says, only there is it considered an outlet hana. So clearly it's hana. Everybody knows you're very happy when someone finds something that you lost. But for some reason, that's not called being mahanim. So these are all massaging a problem, but Lamaisa, there's a glaring issue here that I'm doing him a big favor, right? But how could you possibly justify paying off someone's loan? How come your mom is saving him money? So you have a raya from here that if you pay off someone's loan, like Hanan says, that he cannot come back and collect from you. Amar Boishia, Hamani Hanani. This has to be going according to Hanan. The Amar Ibed Esma Oisav. Even when you pay off a loan, you've wasted your money. Now Rashi says Hanan was not talking about a loan. Hanan was talking about a woman who's getting mezainis. So this is a very important Rashi. Hanani the Amar Ibed Oisav. Zeh Shapirnish as Eishes Chaveiroi. V'nischaven l'shem alvo. When he paid the money to support this man's wife, he wasn't planning to give it as a gift. He had full intention that he wanted the money back. Although he didn't make it clear, he didn't verbalize it. But that's what he wanted. She is shalom le'bayla. He wanted to be paid back from the husband when he returns. Eved ma'asef. He wasted his money. Then yochel loimerlo. He can't say es choivach parati. I paid your choiv, and therefore shalom li, pay me back. Zokt Rashi for hu adin nami lechol choiv shalom. This applies to any choiv. For amad chaverei uporoi. The loiva didn't say, do me a favor, lay out the money and I'll pay you back. You just did it on your own. In a chayev like klum, the loiva doesn't owe you a penny. The chivin, the ilu pari l'shem alvohi. Vibalt, if I wanted my money back, I have no right to collect my money back. So therefore, kipari nami l'shem mechila, if I paid it back without the intention to collect, lav midi yoyev lei, we don't say that you've benefited the fellow. Because had you wanted him to pay you back, you wouldn't have been able to get him to pay you back anyway. So you weren't moichel anything because you weren't entitled to anything. So that's a Rashi learns. But the Rebbeinu Tam that was mentioned earlier is down here. The Rebbeinu Tam Mefarish, some like 6 lines down in the bottom toises. Rebbeinu Mefarish, the Ari Dafka b'mezaynis ishtoi, u'mishum hachi potter. The Ein Hadover Bar Shoyim Mechayiv Zeh Habal Mezaynis. The Rebbeinu Tam Shita is Avada when someone pays off your loan, you got to pay back. The only way we say you don't have to pay back is if you could have said, I would have gotten out of it anyway. He could have said, I wouldn't have had to lay out money to give my wife mezainis. I know my wife. Had she not found the money, she would have lived tight and she would have survived anyway. So by you laying out the money, you didn't help me at all. What do you mean she had access? She had access to liquidate his assets. She still wouldn't have. By a shtarchoiv, Hanan is moida. The hano gemurahi, the loiva is getting a tremendous benefit. He couldn't have gotten out of it. And that's why Tosfos brings down a Yerushalmi who says that even by a regular loiva, you can get out of it. Tosfos holds the Yerushalmi. Tosfos holds that the Yerushalmi argues on our Bavli, and the Yerushalmi holds that even a regular loiva, I could have charmed the Balva, I could have begged him, I could have come up with a way to get out of paying, I could have pushed him up till after Shemitah, I could have gotten out of it. So you still didn't help me. But the Rebbeinu Tam holds it's all depends on. Did I need you or didn't I need you? So oibazoi. So this loiva pareis choivoi has to be speaking not by a regular malva. This pareis choivoi has got to be speaking about someone who supported his friend's wife. Okay, so that's what the Gemara wanted to say. Amar Rab, Oishia Hamani Chanani, the Amar Ibid Es Ma'isov, and that's why I'm not being Mahana a fellow by paying off his choiv. But for Rav Amar, Afilu Temer Rabban. Even the Rabbanan would agree with this halacha here. The Rabbanan says he can collect back, and if you can collect back, how could you do it without collecting back? It's my favorite type of loan. That's the person who signs up in Mr. Shechasevsky's big book. He borrowed money. I'm not nicht zurück zu zahlen. So basically, the deal was I'm borrowing money. It's like when Yaakov Galinsky said I borrowed $100,000 from Moshe Reichman, and I told him as soon as you need it back, I'll pay you back. So little did he know. But I'll call upon him. So therefore, there was no due date on the loan. So if there's no due date on the loan, then by you paying, you're not benefiting me because I wouldn't have had to pay back anyway, anytime. So I understand why Rava didn't like Rabbi Yoshi's shot. He wanted to say that the price is not only according to the Hanan, it's also according to the Rabbanan. My time why didn't Rabbi Yoshi say Rava's shot? That's speaking about a loan without a due date. And then they could have fit according to the Rabbanan. You know why? Because even if there's no due date on a loan, it's very not the shmak to come to shul every day and see your malva staring you up and down. Even though he can't collect from you, but it's very, very uncomfortable. So Nehida Ano Lastly, even though he doesn't have a cash value Ano, because they can't force me to pay, Kisufa me Lastly, he's embarrassed. It's very embarrassing to stare down your malva every day. It's very uncomfortable. And therefore, there is a Hano, and therefore it would have been usher, according to the Rabbanon. So I had to say it's going according to Hanan. This Aleph says that it was a Lishna Achrina, Hasnama Islana, the Michsef Mine, which is really a repeat of the first teretz. To Rashi's not Gershit, but the Geis Rav Meransburg on the side says that it is a second Lashon, and one of them holds it a Shvachana, and the second Lashon holds it's a real Mamonistic Hana. But either way, it's something that wouldn't have allowed you to do this according to Rabbanan. So he had to say it's going according to Hanan, and that's why there's no benefit. Zog to Gemara Vayter. Admin says, so we so far had two takanos that we set over from Hanan, and in each of these two takanos, Rabbi Yechon ben Zakkai voted with Hanan against the Bnei Kohanim Agdolim and Rabbi Yosef ben Hercules. Now we're going to get up to the 7 takanos that Admon had. Admon Omer Shiva. First story is Mi Shemeis v'niach banim uvanos. Someone died, Rachman al and he left over girls and boys as children. So the halach is Bizman Shanasachin Merubin. If there's plenty of assets, so then Abanim Yorshim, the Banim get to keep all the assets. V'abanis Nazoinis. And we learned that the girls, until they're adults or until they're married, they're entitled to be supported from the estate. And we also learned that there's also a takana that 10% of the estate gets given to each daughter for Nadan. Remember, we had a discussion. What if there's 10 daughters? Each one's going to get 10%. So they all get married together. You take 10% and then 10% of the remaining 90, and then you even it out. But they're entitled to a fair amount of money from the estate. But the billions of dollars, that stays with the kids. But if there's not enough money to support all of the children for at least 12 months, which is how Rashi quotes from the Gemara in Bava Basra, the definition of Nechasim Uatim, then Abonis Yazunu, the girls, they get first rights to be supported. Abonim, Yachsrol Apsochim, let them go knock on doors. Admon said, that's not fair. B'shvil Shani Zochar, Hifsadati, because I'm a male, I lose out. The truth is, I don't even know what a male and what a female is. I don't even know what these terms mean. But if I was a biologist, then maybe I would know. Omar Rabbi Gamliel. So Rabbi Gamliel said, "Roya Anias Divi Adam." I like Admon's svara. So first, right off the bat, we have to point out. Right off the bat, we have to put. It's not fair. Oh, that's exactly what I want to comment on. So Tosfos says that the Gemara is going to tell us later that whenever Rabbi Gamliel agreed with Admon, we pass him like Admon. The problem is we don't pass him like Admon. The halacha is if there's not enough money, we say that the bonis get mezonis and the bonim should be chazal psachim. So Tosfos says that Admon is not arguing halacha. He's just making a point, and Rabbi Shimon Gamliel likes his point, but he's not arguing halacha. So let's just see Tosfos right across from where we are. He's not arguing halacha. He's just pointing out that it's unjust. He's not passing the halacha. In a way, it's a little bit unjust. Why should the girls get first rights to the estate? The fact that what exactly he's saying? I'm a zocher, so he's trying. Since I'm a zocher, I'm more entitled, and now I'm getting less. Why is the zocher more entitled? Amar Abaye, Hachik Amar. This is what the time is. B'shvil shani zocher v'royu lasik b'Torah. Because I'm a zocher and I'm roy to learn Torah, which should entitle me to more money. If Saturday I should lose out. Amalei Rabba said that's not a time at all. Because man the asik b'Torah who the yaris, man the asik b'Torah lo yaris. Someone who's learning, someone who's a Talmud Chacham, someone who's asik b'Torah, that gives him zero rights as far as Yerusha is concerned. It has no relevance to Yerusha. So that cannot be the time. Amar Rabba Hachik Amar. Because I'm a zocher, and if there was plenty of nechasim, I get first rights to that. I'm the Yerush, she's just getting mezainis. So I'm really more connected to the Yerusha. So if Satati b'nechasim mu'atim, so I should get less by nechasim mu'atim, you see I'm in the first position, so I should get before the girls get. You know, everyone knows there's a famous story with Ayid, an elderly Yid who was dying in the hospital, and the nurses were attending to him. He's a very nice man. And one day he called all his children around because he was preparing for his death. And he says, Rivka, you get all the buildings in Tribeca. And Yeruchel, you get all the buildings in the Lower East Side. Yankel, you get all the buildings on the Upper West Side. And Beryl, you get all the buildings on the Upper East Side. Right? After they left the room, the nurse went over to the children and said, your father seems to be such a modest man. I never knew he was so wealthy. So they said, no, my father used to deliver the newspaper. He was giving out his paper routes. This is a little bit complex. We have to have a couple. Someone told, Reuben told Shimon, I gave you a pikadon, 10 jugs full of oil. And he said, the friend answered back, you gave me 10 jugs, but there was no oil in them. So I owe you jugs. So I was mulling jugs with oil, and the moedim mikzas was only on the jugs. So I saw in some aforshim that a kad describes a jug that's full of oil, and a kankan describes a jug that's not full of oil, but it's the same. The problem is what Yom Tov is coming up, Chanukah, and we say uminaisar kankanim nasa leish l'shoshanim. So obviously the kankanim that the nace was made of is they found full sealed jugs of oil. So I don't understand the pshat that I saw that a kankan is referring to an empty jug because unless because it rhymes. It could do noiser kadim nasa leish l'shoshanim kankanim shoshanim. So maybe it's because of the rhyme, but I don't know. But I'll call them that was the case. So Reuven is telling Shimon, you owe me jugs that are full of oil, and Shimon said, I owe you empty jugs. So Adman says, time. In this case, I asked you for A and B. You agree that you owe me B. It's a classic case of Moedim Mikzas. You show it as a shvur deraisa. This is not a Haidos Mikzas Minataina. Well, it's a little bit difficult to understand because I asked for A and B and you agreed to A. So why isn't that not? So the Gemara is going to delve into this. I agree with Adman that there would be no Shavuos Moedim Mikzas over here. I'm sorry, there would be a Shavuos Moedim Mikzas. There would be a Shavuos Moedim Mikzas. The Chum said not. Zok Gemara, Shmami no Rabban. According to the Chachamim, who hold that in this case there is no Shavuos Moedim Mikzas, that ta'anu chitin b'soyin. Someone goes and tells his friend, I lent you a bushel, I gave you a bushel of wheat and a bushel of barley. And his friend answers back, yes, I borrowed a bushel of soyin, but I never took a bushel of chitin. So Potter, just like when I said you owe me jugs and oil, and you agreed only to the jugs, the Chacham say I'm Potter. So in this case, you should be Potter as well. The problem is there's a machlokes amiroyim in this exact case. And there is an Amoyer who argues. The Amoyer of Nachman Amar Shmuel cannot argue with the Chacham. The Amoyer of Nachman Amar Shmuel, Ta'anu Chitin Usoirim, if you mon from your friend, Chitin and Soirim, and he agreed to only one of the two minim, the Allah is Chayiv. But from our Mishnah, we see that the Chachamim hold its Potter. So Taisus asked, so big deal, let him hold like Adnon. Anyway, we pass like Adnon. Rabbi Gamliel said the right is to be Adnon. But we'll put that aside. Amar Rav Yudah Marav, I have a perfect teretz. It's b'toyanoi mida. That's not the case of our Mishnah. The case of our Mishnah is that when I'm wanting you kadei shemen, I'm saying you owe me 10 jugs worth of oil. In other words, you don't. I never give you jugs. I'm using the word kad to describe a quantity. You owe me 10 jugs worth of oil. And you said, no, I don't owe you any oil at all. I owe you jugs. So that's for sure potter. Because at Tanu Chitin, that's for sure potter. Everybody agrees potter. But Avada, if it's Tanu Chitin Usayr, Avada, even the Chomer holds high. If that's the case, where it's mamish a case of Tanu Chitin, I asked for oil and you give me back jugs, my time at Admon. So why in the world would Admon hold that you make a Shavua? This is not a good case of Moed B'Mitzvahs. So Rava is going to say that everybody agrees about halachas. Everybody agrees Tanu Chitin V'Adloi B'Sayim is potter from a Shavuos Moed B'Mitzvahs, and everybody agrees that Tanu Chitin Usayim V'Adloi B'Echadman there is a Shavuos Moed B'Mitzvahs. The machlokes here is a certain language that was used, phraseology that was used by the Teveya, and what it means, and therefore it'll impact if it's a case of Tanu Chitin V'Adloi B'Sayim or if it's a case of Tanu Chitin Usayim V'Adloi B'Echadman. So the Chulam, everybody agrees. Heichad Amar Loi, as the Teveya said, Molei Asara Kadei Shemen Yeshli Bib Bayrach. In your big bar, you have 10 kadim worth of oil. So clearly, I'm not asking you for jugs. I'm saying there's 10 jugs full in your big bar. No jugs at all. So therefore, Shemen Katan Lei Kankanim Loi Katan. Everybody agrees if that's the word that the Malva used, you have a Sarah Kadei Shemen in your bar, clearly I'm only asking for oil and not for jugs. So if you would answer me back, I have jugs, there's for sure no shvua, because I'm asking for apples and you're giving me oranges. If I said Asara Kadei Shemen Meleim Yesh Li Etzlecha, if I say you have 10 full jugs of my oil, well, that's very clear. I'm asking for the jugs and for the oil. Shemen Vikan Kanim Katoinli. Keep ligi, what's the case of our Mishnah, where there's a machlokes between Admoin, who holds you make a shvua, and the Chachamim hold you don't make a shvua, is heichad amar loi asara kadei shemen yesh li etzlecha. So it's a little bit of an ambiguous language. It's not clear. Admoin oimer yesh b'lashon hazeh lashon kakanim. Admoin says that when I say asara kadei shemen, it means the jugs with the oil inside them. Rabban Zavri ein b'lashon hazeh lashon kakanim. It means oil only. So therefore, since Admon looks at it like I'm asking for both, and you're agreeing that you only one, surely you make a Shavuos Moed B'Mitzvahs. And the Chachamim who look at it like you're only looking for oil, and he's only agreeing to jugs, there's no Shavuos Moed B'Mitzvahs. So the Gemara, okay, you answered the Rabbanan so well to agree with Reb Nachman Amar Shmuel that Tanu Chitin V'Sorin V'Hadlei B'Echadman is Chayiv. Now we're going to have a problem with the man who argued Reb Nachman Amar Shmuel, because you did such a good job. The whole reason why the Chacham said there's no shvua is because it's Tanu Chitin V'Adlei B'Sorin. Chayiv, you would agree to Admoin. Well, if you would agree to Admoin, now how are we going to explain the Bar Plukta of Reb Nachman Amar Shmuel? Leimet Avatiyov to the Reb Chia Bar Abba. Reb Chia Bar Abba Tanu Chitin V'Sorin V'Hadlei B'Echad Mehen Potter. So Amar Absini Berashi, our case is a little different, because oil and the jug are not two different things. If I ask you for oil and you say I have jugs, it's actually one and the same. You know what it's like? If I said you owe me a remind in its shell, and you tell me back, I only owe you the remind. It's one piece. So therefore it's called Moed B'Mitzvahs. It's a little bit of a stretch to say that the container of oil is like the skin of a fruit. The Gemara knocks it off right away. So Maskav Lo Ravina, remind Veloy Klipasa Eloy Minter. I understand why a remind is part and parcel with its klipa, because without its klipa, it's going to spoil very quickly. Shemen Minter Veloy Kankanim. Shemen could last. It could last in a bar. It doesn't need Kankanim. So how could you say it's one and the same? So therefore, we need to find a way to explain our Mishnah where it will have no relevance to the machlokes of Tanu Chitin Usarin V'Hadlei B'Echadman. Because if it has any relevance, it's going to take a side. And then one Amor is going to have a problem. So we're going to have to find a new case to say is what our Mishnah is talking about that has nothing to do with the machlokes of Rabbi Huna Amar Shmuel and Rabbi Kibar Rabbi. Ela hakabama yiskinon the Amar lei asara kadei shemen yeshli etzlach. Reuben told Shimon, you have 10 full jugs of oil that belong to me. And Shimon answers back, Shemen lo hayu dvar me'olim. I don't owe you a drop of oil. I never took a drop of oil from you. Kanim nami, and even the 10 jugs that you want from me, chamish yislach. I owe you 5, the chamish leslach. So now everybody agrees that we have a triggered moed b'miktas, a moed b'miktas on the jugs. So Adon Omer yesh b'loshn zeh loshn kan kanim. When I said asora kadei shemen, I was making 2 requests. You owe me oil and you owe me jugs. You were moed b'miktas on the jugs. So that automatically triggered a shvu deraisa moed b'miktas that everybody would agree to. Since there's a chiv deraisa to swear on the kakanim, mishtama nami hashemen. I de gilgul. Through a gilgul shvua, we'll make him swear for the shemen, and that's part of our mishnah. When you claim you owe me oil, that's all you asked is oil, and he told you back, I owe you jugs. So therefore, and therefore there is no shus moed b'miktas. But everybody agrees that if it was tanu chitnu sorim, everybody could agree that it's chayiv, or everybody could agree it's potter, because our discussion has nothing to do with that. So we'll stop here, Be'ez Hashem. Tomorrow we're going to learn the Geshmaka Gemara. It's if a shver promises a lot of nadin to the item, and then after the chasni tells him, if you think I'm going to pay, you're wrong, because I'm not going to pay. Okay, Akadavach, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow. Akadavach. So the story